We're on March 3rd today, and we are learning about preparing Pesach. We're learning about Chametz today, Chametz crash course. You see, you're supposed to study about a Jewish holiday 30 days before the Jewish holiday, especially when it comes to Pesach, because there is so much to learn about the holiday, to know for the holiday, to prepare for the holiday. It's really not the kind of holiday you can prepare for in the very last minute, especially if you want to be able to do it properly. So that's why we're going to spend today doing a quick crash course on the subject of Chametz. Let me go right into it. Chametz is obviously the persona non grata on Chametz, the prohibited substance, which we're not allowed to have. It is leavened grain products, fermented grain products that we're not allowed to have on Pesach. We have to clear them out of our homes in our preparation for Pesach. So 30 days before the holiday, in the days of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, our sages instituted that the Torah teachers should teach publicly, like on YouTube or Facebook, should teach the laws of the festival 30 days before the festival, which means from Purim, they should start teaching the laws of Pesach, because it's exactly 30 days before, from the 5th of Iyar, about Shavuos, and from the 14th of Elul, about the holiday of Sukkot. Even after the temple was destroyed, this custom was not dismantled, and every wise teacher who has students should teach the students about the upcoming holiday for 30 days before the holiday, in order that they should be familiar with the laws and know exactly what they need to do. In our generation, when all the laws are really published and printed, each individual should take upon themselves to read and study the books. Printed probably means available on YouTube. It's available on Facebook. Here it is. We're hopefully creating the content right now to the point that you yourself have the obligation to prepare yourself. You can't say, well, I didn't speak Hebrew. It's available. It's in English. It's published. It's available. We're just doing it right now on our YouTube channel and our Facebook. Learn them to the point. It's our own. The onus of obligation is upon ourselves to learn them and prepare them for the holiday. The 30 days before Pesach, it's good to be careful and to look into everything everything in our homes, that it shouldn't have any chametz stuck to it. We got to clean our homes, not only preparing our minds for Pesach, but also preparing our homes for Pesach, to the point that everything will be able to be clean when the day of Pesach arrives. Also, 30 days before Pesach, we don't eat matzah. We don't eat matzah for 30 days before Pesach, okay? To make it special when we eat matzah at the Seder. I'd like to welcome Winston from Jakarta, Ron and Elaine Collins on YouTube. And on Facebook, I see we've got Marty and Terry from Atlanta, Corey and Keith Kleinig is with us, Ed Hockman and Rob Berger, and anyone else that's with us live or later. Let's go straight into this. I'm going straight into the laws of Chametz. I'm going to go into this crash course on Chametz. Let's see how much we can cover today. The night before Pesach, this year the Seder is on Saturday night, the first Seder. So the night before Pesach would be Friday night, but you can't do what I'm about to tell you on Friday night. So we actually do it on Thursday night. The night before Pesach, or in this year it's Thursday night, 2 nights before Pesach, we check for Chametz, and we have to check immediately at the beginning of the night, which means from the time of nightfall when 3 stars come out. You're not allowed to begin eating. You're not allowed to do any labor. You're not allowed to study from half an hour before nightfall, in order that you shouldn't get busy, engrossed, or involved in whatever else you're doing, the eating or the labor, and you might come to delay the checking of the chametz. That's why half an hour before nightfall, you've already got to be ready and waiting, doing nothing else, just preparing for the checking of the chametz. You shouldn't delay the checking of the chametz. It has to happen right at the beginning of nightfall. Even if you did indeed start doing something else, like you did start a meal or you did start doing something else, you should stop the moment of nightfall and you should begin your checking of the chametz. If you're looking for a friend who is not learning, if you ask a friend of yours that is not studying Torah, if you ask him to be your alarm clock, to remind you when nightfall comes so that he can stop you and you can start checking the chametz immediately, that is fine. If you can study Torah and you have someone else who's your alarm clock, your wife, whatever, your husband or something, that would remind you immediately when it's time to check for chametz. the congregation gathers to daven evening services immediately at the time of nightfall, right? So there's a slight discrepancy here. You have to daven evening services at nightfall, right? So the congregation will daven Ma'ariv at nightfall in order that they can go straight after nightfall, after the evening service, to go home to check for Chametz. Someone who davens all year long with the congregation, and this night, the night Erev Pesach, he doesn't daven with the congregation. What he should do is he should daven at home immediately at nightfall, and then he should check. But someone who prays all year long at home and doesn't daven with the minyan, then on this night of Erev Pesach, he should first check for chametz, and afterwards he should daven Ma'ariv. Where do we need to check? Now, when we understand what the kind of rigorous check that has to happen on the night before Pesach, we can infer and understand what kind of cleaning we have to be doing before Pesach. We all know the term spring cleaning. Where does the term spring cleaning come from? It came from when the Goyim saw the Jews going a little OCD nuts, cleaning their homes before Pesach. They were like, there they go the Jews again, right? There they go again. It's springtime. I guess the Jews clean during springtime. It's a biblical obligation that Pesach has to take place in the spring. That's the reason why we have a leap year every 3 years approximately, with an extra 30 days, because in order to keep the season, in order to keep Pesach in the spring, you have to follow the lunar calendar. Now, since there's a discrepancy between the lunar and the solar calendar of approximately 11 days, therefore every 3 years you need to add another month. And that's why the Jewish holidays are either late or early, because we're always trying to keep Pesach in the spring, hence the term spring cleaning. Okay, so let's see how rigorous is the check supposed to be taking place the night before Pesach. You need to be checking anywhere in your home that there is a suspicion that there might have been chametz brought into that location, even if it was not a regular place to keep chametz. So, for example, the kitchen is obviously a place where there's a lot of food, but let's say even the couches, where the TV room or the office, is it possible that you sometimes ate in the office and there's some crumbs in the office? Yes, even the bedroom. Those are all the kind of places that you have to check for chametz. Therefore, all the rooms of the house, the attic, the basement, we don't know what that is in Florida, but up north there is such a thing called a basement, and your store, your business, your office, right? All of these places where it's possible that you brought in chametz during Pesach, you have to check them. Therefore, you should check the kids' strollers, right? The kids' strollers, very high chance of chametz being in there. Check the kids' toys. You just check the kids' pockets, right? Check the kids' pockets. Even the vacuum cleaner. Well, what happens with the vacuum cleaner? The chametz goes into the vacuum cleaner, but you need to make sure you empty the vacuum cleaner before Pesach. Otherwise, you have chametz in your house inside of the vacuum cleaner. You got to check your car, your briefcase, all these places, obviously. By the way, what is chametz? Just a quick crash course on chametz. Chametz is the 5 grains fermented: wheat, barley, spelt, oats, or rye. 5 grains that have been in contact with water for more than 18 minutes. That's it. Which means pasta. What's pasta made out of? It's made out of wheat that is cooked. It's pure chametz, not just bread. Bagels. Pasta's chametz. A lot of foods that we have today that are, because they're processed foods, they're made with all sorts of preservatives. Even if it's a food that doesn't seem to have chametz, it's made with a lot of preservatives. Those preservatives are very, very possible. The stuff that they use to glue it together or whatever is very possibly chametz. That's why you have to check the products that you buy for Pesach, that they have a P on it, a P for Passover, like an OUP or an OKP. Make sure that P is kosher for Passover, because it means that the kosher certification agency has investigated all the details of the ingredients of the product to make sure that they have not been used for Pesach. And oftentimes the food factories switch their lines of production for Pesach, where they'll take out a certain ingredient, they'll kosher the factory, and put a different kind of ingredient, like Coca-Cola, for example. The red bottle tops, they change them, I think, to yellow bottle tops. Those are the chametz free Coca-Cola. Without getting into the details of exactly what Coca-Cola is doing, it's an interesting concept, a little more detailed. I'm going to just tell you it's more about kitnias, which is legumes, than it is about chametz. But for whatever, let's just keep it on the crash course. Every room that needs to be checked needs to be cleaned before the checking, in order that it should be easy to check it. So too, You should clean underneath your beds in case there's some chametz that rolled over there. It's also customary to clean them on the 13th day, so that, because remember, Pesach's on the eve of the 15th, right? So you check on the eve of the 14th. Therefore, you should clean them on the 13th in order that you'll have time to get them clean. Now, this obviously is talking about when our homes were tiny. You know, when you lived in a studio house. When your house is a studio, you had like a bathroom which you shared with 50 other people, right? Then you had your kitchen and your bedroom was the kind of one room. I remember I was in Mexico a couple years ago, and we were driving down the road, and we saw how people live. We just went out, we bought some vegetables. We saw how they live, like one room. That's the whole house. I imagine you could clean that in one day. But when you have mansions like we live in today, 10, 15 rooms in your house, 4 bathrooms, 6 bedrooms, a living room, a den, a kitchen, another kitchen, a cabana, this, a dasa, Jensen, not to mention the garage. That's going to take more than one day, and that's why you need to be preparing this in the month before Pesach. You have to check in all the holes, in all the cracks, in all the hiding places, in all the corners. We check in all the holes, only until a place that your arm reaches. So in olden days, people lived in these olden homes, right? These like castles, chateaus, whatever. If there's a hole in the wall, you don't have to break down the wall to get in there. You only have to check until where your arm reaches, and the rest you can just nullify. We're going to talk about the nullification. It's part of the process after the checking of the chametz. We say anything I didn't find is now nullified. I don't own it anymore, and therefore you're not violating the prohibition of owning chametz on Pesach. We have a custom to scrape the benches, scrape the chairs, the eating places, and the walls where the chametz was near, like the backsplash, right? And if there's chametz in those cracks that you can't reach to, then you should like cover it with some sort of a bleach or something, so it makes it no longer chametz. Same thing with your drain, by the way. No way you can get into your drain. That's a hole that you can't reach. But if you pour bleach down your drain, then anything down there is now nullified. It's no longer in the category of food, and therefore it doesn't qualify as chametz anymore. Interesting, in my house, when we were building our house, our kitchen, we told the architect to make an intimate breakfast corner for 10. His jaw dropped as you're like 10, an intimate corner. Yeah, we have 8 kids. So, the eating area of the kitchen is quite the war zone when it comes to cleaning for Pesach, because, there's all these there's a little bench over there. And if you're going to pull out the bench, underneath the bench, you find all sorts of interesting surprises. You also have to check and to shake out the pockets of your clothing, yours, your children's, because sometimes we put chametz into our pockets, and you shouldn't, and you shouldn't check them on the eve of the 14th, the night before Pesach, because tomorrow when you eat chametz, you might come and put it back in your pocket. Rather, you should literally check the pockets, the last place to check, the morning of the Seder, the morning before the Seder, before you burn the chametz, because that's like the last place you check. By the way, another interesting thing, just before we burn the chametz, you want to make sure to brush your teeth. Brush your teeth just before you burn the chametz, and throw away the toothbrush, because that toothbrush is chametz every year. Buy yourself a new toothbrush to start off the morning before Pesach, before the Seder. The shuls. What about the shuls and the houses of learning? They also need to be checked the night before Pesach. I would love it if we can get some volunteers, because I always do this myself every year. If anybody's willing to volunteer, come out here and help me to check the shul. It just makes it a little bit easier the night before the Seder, because kids in the shuls, they bring food into all the little nooks and crannies, and you got to be careful to make sure it's cleaned before Pesach. How does it work? Let me check something. Okay, so I'm going to skip now into the actual law of chametz. It's like this. Chametz on Pesach and after Pesach. Someone who finds, just one interesting thing over here. So there's the law of checking the chametz, and there's the law of burning the chametz. But what happens if you leave your house? What happens if you go to your in-laws? You go to a Pesach hotel. I don't know, Cancun for Pesach or something, right? What happens if you leave your house before Pesach, and you do not leave someone in your home that's able to check for chametz the night before Pesach? What you have to do is you have to check for chametz the night before you leave all the rooms of the house, and right after you leave, or right after you check, you then should nullify any more chametz that you didn't find, that you don't know about, and that you didn't find. Okay, so that's, you still have to check your house even if you move out of it for Pesach. Someone who finds chametz in his house during Pesach, there's the intermediary days of Pesach. The first 2 days and the last 2 days are full-blown yantif, but the middle 4 days are what we call chol hamoed, the mundane of the holiday. They're days which is like a semi-holiday. You're allowed to drive. but not allowed to work, right? You're allowed to write, well, sort of. You're not really allowed to write, but you're allowed to do much more things than you can do on Shabbos, but you cannot work, right? It's still a semi-holiday. So if you find the chametz in your home, let's say you find a cookie, you find the cookie on Pesach, what happens now? So you take it out and you burn it. And if it has the size of an olive in it, then you actually have to make a blessing. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu v'tzivanu al biur chametz, the blessing of burning chametz. If you found it in the first 2 days or the last 2 days of Pesach, where you're not allowed to burn it, or you found it on Shabbos in the middle days of Pesach, well, then you're not allowed to even touch it. It's what we call muktzah. It's something which you're not allowed to even touch on Shabbos, on Yantiv. Then what you do is you cover it with a dish until the end of Yantiv or the end of Shabbos, and then you burn it. If you burn the chametz at the end of the first 2 days of Pesach, you should burn it without a blessing, even if it is an olive size, right? The only time you make the blessing is if you burn it immediately upon finding it. The festival of Pesach ends at the end of the 8th day of Pesach at nightfall. Unlike those people that think that Yom Kippur ends 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock, they literally break the fast, right? It actually ends at nightfall. Yom Kippur ends at nightfall. All the Jewish holidays end at nightfall. Every Shabbos ends at nightfall. And therefore, Pesach and the prohibition of possessing chametz, you can't own chametz, you can't have chametz even in your possession, and chametz can't even be seen, right? So the prohibition applies until the end of the 8th day, until nightfall, or in the Holy Land of Israel until the end of the 7th day, till nightfall. And all the laws of chametz and Pesach apply at their full strength and intensity until that time. Therefore, you got to be careful not to buy chametz at the end of Pesach that was baked or prepared on Pesach by a Jew. Imagine it's nightfall on the 8th day, end of the 8th day of Pesach, and you go out to down the street, and a fellow Jew, a baker, he has fresh challah ready to go. So after Pesach, can I buy the fresh challah? The answer is no. When did he make this? When did he buy the flour? Right? Obviously, he bought it on Pesach, and he violated the holiday. Right? That's why it takes a couple hours before you can get fresh bagels or something, at the end of Pesach, as if you're in such a rush to get gluten, right? Cream donuts. Crispy cream donuts. All right, very good. Steve's got a craving already now for after Pesach. So if that's what you're craving, you got to make sure if you buy it from a Gentile, that's okay. Because the Gentile is allowed to own chametz on Pesach. That's not a problem. But if you're buying it from a Jew, that's when you get a problem. You have to wait a couple hours. Because even after Pesach, you're not allowed to enjoy to benefit from the chametz that was belonging to a Jew on Pesach. You have to be careful not to enjoy after Pesach from chametz that belonged to a Jew who didn't sell it properly. Now, this is a huge, huge problem. What happens if a Jew owned chametz on Pesach? Let's say you have a Jew who owns a beer company. Beer is made out of barley hops, right? Barley is one of the 5 grains, and you ferment the barley. Beer is pure 100% chametz. You have a Jew who owns, let's say Corona. Corona, what a name for a beer, right? Let's say Corona is owned by a Jew. Right, Mr. Corona, he's a Jew, right? And he owns the beer. And he says he's not selling his chametz on Pesach. You're not allowed to drink that beer that was owned by the Jew on Pesach. What you actually have to do is wait about 4 months until all the supply that they owned on Pesach is depleted, sold, and gone. And then they have new supply that was owned by a non-Jew. Sorry, there would be supply that the Jew didn't own on Pesach. So we have to be very meticulous, very, very careful about how we buy chametz after Pesach if we bought it from someone who didn't sell his chametz. I can tell you that there's a store here in Palm Beach Gardens, which is a vitamin store, good morning, Hannah. Nice to see you. And Mickey and Miriam. Anyone else is with us on YouTube as well. There's a store here in Palm Beach Gardens, which is a vitamin store. Vitamins have a ton of chametz in them. They're made out of all that material, all the enzymes and whatever that they put into those vitamins. It's all made with all sorts of I forget the word, but it's made out of fermented grains. So this guy, he's not an observant Jew necessarily, but he makes it his business to sell his chametz before Pesach because he knows how careful you need to be that if he did not sell his chametz to a Gentile on Pesach, then he technically owned the chametz on Pesach, and therefore you're not allowed to buy from him after Pesach, and that's obviously not good for business. what do you do with chametz before Pesach? So first of all, we spoke about how you need to clean out every chametz that is in your possession. We said where you need to check for chametz. We said what is chametz, and we said it. By the way, you don't have to burn all the vodka in your possession. What you have to do is just put it away in a closet. Put it away in a closet, and lock up that closet before Pesach. And we sell that closet to the Gentile, or that room to the Gentile, or that house to the Gentile, or that factory, for that matter, to the Gentile. So it's owned by the non-Jew on Pesach. How do we do that process? It goes like this. A Jew who has in his possession chametz on Pesach violates every instant of Pesach. 2 prohibitions. It shall not be seen in your possession, it shall not be found in your possession. So every moment of Pesach is violating 2 biblical commandments, which are very, very bad. They're punishable with excision. That's for someone who eats chametz on Pesach. It's koris. Koris. Eating chametz on Pesach is a prohibition of koris, which is having your soul cut off. We're giving a class tomorrow night on heaven and hell in Jewish thought. It's the Journey of the Soul class, lesson 4, which is a fascinating discovery of the belief in heaven and hell in our tradition, and how hell is actually a good place to go. It's like an upgrade. It's a blessing to go to hell. And some people have been denied to go to hell. And if somebody whose soul is cut off, is just cut off and not given any path forward. It's the most terrible punishment. So chametz, which is owned by this Jew, like we just mentioned, is not allowed to be ever benefited by another Jew ever again. And even if that Jew who owned the chametz on Pesach before Pesach, if he nullified it, still because he owned it, it's not ever allowed to be benefited from ever again. Therefore, what should he do? Someone who has a lot of chametz, like in olden days, how much chametz did people have in their possession? When somebody came home and there was nothing to eat for dinner, it means the cupboards were bare. It means there wasn't a morsel of food on the table. Today, nothing. But today, when you come home and you say there's nothing to eat, it means that you have pantries full of food. It just means that there's nothing ready to eat, right? So if you have a lot of chametz today, or you own a factory or a business which has chametz, then you don't have to just destroy all of it. What you do is you sell it to a Gentile. You sell it before Pesach, when you're still allowed to own it before the prohibition begins. And then when you sell it to the Gentile, it shouldn't be like a joke. It's got to be a very serious thing that you're making up your mind. I do not own this chametz. This chametz belongs to the Gentile, and he can truly claim this as his own if he chooses to indeed transfer possession to his. He owns it, but if he wants to truly take full acquisition of the factory or the possessions, then it will be his. You have to have in your mind when you sell the chametz that you're truly selling it with a complete and irrevocable sale. Now, when you do that, we typically fill out a form, and you can actually fill out that form already at jewishgardens.com/chametz. If you go to jewishgardens.com/chametz, I think that link is already live. Let's see in a moment. You can actually already sell your chametz. I think, yeah, it is already live. Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. The chametz is already live, where you list your addresses where you want to sell your chametz. You can actually do it already right now and sell your chametz. What you do is you sell it to the shul, to the rabbi, and then I collect all the chametz of the people that sold me their chametz, and I then in turn sell it to a designated Gentile in a legally binding sale. Now the way it works is that if the Gentile, let's say you sell me your factory, your beer factory, and I now own your beer factory for the duration of Pesach, but then I sell it to the Gentile. What happens is, if he decides, he says, well, yeah, actually I want to own this beer factory, it's going to cost them billions of dollars to actually get the key. Billions. I mean, you're not going to get poorer from this. But, or if he decides to take the room in your house, which has the chametz, it's going to cost them very, 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 very much money. You'll be worth it. It will be worth your while. But you have to have in your mind that this is truly an irrevocable sale. I don't think it's happened in the history of the world that the designated Gentile of Pesach has ever exercised his right to take full possession of all the chametz that was sold to him on Pesach. So you don't really have anything to worry about. However, in your mind, you have to have in mind that it's an irrevocable sale. And after Pesach, what normally happens is 100% of the time is that the Gentile will just sell it back to the rabbi and then releases it to the congregation. Everybody's able to have their chametz back again. You're allowed to sell your chametz only until the end of the 5th hour of Erev Pesach, of the morning of Pesach, which means about 1 hour before half day. Therefore, someone who sells his chametz to the rabbi or to the court, the Jewish court, should hurry to do so. Don't wait till the last minute. It always happens. Every year, I sell the chametz the morning before the Seder, and always somebody after is like, "Oh, Rabbi, can I still sell the chametz?" I'm like, "No, you can't. You can't because it's too late now. The prohibition has begun from the end of the 5th hour. The prohibition has begun, and the chametz is not yours for you to sell it to me or me to sell it to the Gentile." Okay, we sell the chametz, not only the actual fermented grains, but even the dishes, the pots, the pans, the crockery, the cutlery, any vessels that have the flavor of chametz inside of them as well. And now when you buy it back from the Gentile after Pesach, you don't need to dip them in a mikveh again. Normally, when you buy dishes back from a Gentile, buy dishes from a Gentile, you have to dip them in the ocean or in a mikveh. Here, you do not need to do that after Pesach. According to the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, the first Chabad Rebbe, we sell the chametz to the goy through a guarantor. There's got to be a guarantor in the contract. Many Jewish communities have adopted this stringency of the Alter Rebbe. We also make the rabbi, that would be me in this case, authorized POA effectively for selling the chametz. In the house of the Rebbes of Chabad, they would sell the chametz to the rabbi who was doing the sale with a guarantor, and he would then sell it to the Gentile. The custom of the world is to actually do the sale through a kinyan sudar, which means acquisition of a handkerchief. The Gentile will pick up a handkerchief, right? And with that he acquires the chametz that's being sold to him. It's just a technical sale in Talmudic parlance. It's a legal binding sale according to Jewish law. We actually do the same thing, by the way, at a wedding. Just FYI, when the witnesses testify for the wedding, they confirm they ratify the wedding. They do the same thing with a kinyan sudar, with raising a handkerchief. Since there are many laws relevant, many details and minutiae that relate to the selling of the chametz, it's appropriate to sell the chametz through a rabbi. Don't do it yourself. Don't sell it to your landscaper or something, or your assuming that you know what you're doing. There's a lot of nuance over here. Again, you can sell your chametz online right now at jewishgardens.com/chametz, CHAMETZ, jewishgardens.com/chametz. All the dishes that have not been koshered for Pesach. So you have chametz dishes that you use all year round, and they're kosher for all year round use. But if you didn't kosher them for Pesach, you're just putting them away in the closet. You have to clean them well, Erev Pesach, before the 6th hour, to the point that there's no residue of chametz on them, and then put them away in the cupboard that you're selling to the Gentile. And it's good to lock them up in a special room and to hide away the key until after Pesach. You shouldn't even walk into that room on Pesach. If you do not close the door of the room which has chametz, because you need a room, use that room, it's good to make some sort of a divider, some sort of a division, a mechitza, which would be at least 10 handbreadths high, to make it recognizable that this is the part of the room that I'm not going into. Just like we have in a shul mechitza, you have some sort of a separation to serve as a reminder that you won't come to mistakenly use the chametz on Pesach. The custom of the Hasidim is that when they have something to eat or drink that they received from the Rebbe, if you receive some vodka, some cake from the Rebbe, and you don't want to, normally it's chametz, it's vodka or cake, you don't want to sell that to the Gentile, right, on Pesach. Therefore, we're careful to eat or drink it before Pesach begins. And that, my friends, today ends the chametz crash course, just a quick crash course as to how we prepare for Pesach with regards to the chametz. There's a lot of other stuff we're going to be covering in the preparation for Pesach, but I hope you've learned something. I hope you found that meaningful, and hopefully you'll share this video with anybody that you think needs to brush up on their Pesach preparation. Thank you very much, everybody. Today is Wednesday, and I believe that the Rebbetzin Sarah Krinsky is giving a class today at 1:30 to the ladies of the community on some sort of a Pesach preparation course. I'm not sure exactly what she's doing, but it's going to be at 1:30 on Zoom, jewishgardens.com/Zoom, a ladies class, jewishgardens.com/Zoom for the ladies today at 1:30. Thank you very much, everybody. Shalom, and have a wonderful day.